This is a presentation on career transition strategies. This was created for a sizable group of people affected by a big layoff, while the presentation here is specific to individuals affected by that layoff. The material covered here applies to anyone in a similar situation.
So, um, yeah, coming out of a job, it is always a unique experience coming out of it. When you come out of it voluntarily, it's probably a different experience than when it's forced. And one of the things I'm sure you all individually experience is a sense of loss. And it's not to be minimized, right? The emotional toll of it or the change in reality that one suddenly experiences because of that. So that is one major thing to handle and address, and we'll talk about some strategies for that. And another thing is the loss of the daily routine, right? So, you have a job, you start your day, you end your day, you have a week full of work, you sort of have a thing set and suddenly it's gone. So can give sort of like a state of mental chaos or uncertainty. And there's also the uncertainty of, well, when am I going to land a job? Where am I going to get a job? How do I have to move? What happens to my finances? Et cetera, all those kinds of things. So, you know, this is certainly an issue and something that needs to be, you need to be extra attentive to your finances. I mean, if this is a two income earner household, you probably have some flexibility there. But if not, you got to even with that, I think you'll have to manage your finances extremely well. That's very important because that's not a stress you want to add to all the other things that exist. And then you have the emotional state of stress, right? Of having, lost something that you love doing, that you enjoyed doing, and was a big part of your identity, right? So, and it's a natural human response. Can't really do anything about it other than do something, one step at a time to make it better. I just wanted to play a little video here on stress that Bezos talked about. I don't know if you guys have watched it before, but it might be worth a watch again. So let me play that.
I think in my particular case, I laugh a lot. So it is, there are, I think stress, you can be, I think one of the things that's very important to note about stress is that stress primarily comes from not taking action over something that you can have some control over. So if I find that some particular thing is causing me to have stress, that's a warning flag for me. What it means is there's something that I haven't completely identified, perhaps in my conscious mind, that is bothering me, and I haven't yet taken any action on it. I find as soon as I identify it and make the first phone call or send off the first email message or whatever it is that we're going to do to start to address that situation, even if it's not solved, the mere fact that we're addressing it dramatically reduces any stress that might come from it. So stress comes from ignoring things that you shouldn't be ignoring. I think in large part. So stress doesn't come, people get stress wrong all the time, in my opinion. Stress doesn't come from hard work, for example. You can be working incredibly hard and loving it. And likewise, you can be out of work and incredibly stressed over that. So, and likewise, if you kind of use that as an analogy for what I was just talking about, if you're out of work, but you're going through, a disciplined approach of, a series of job interviews and so on and working to remedy that situation, you're going to be a lot less stressed than if you're just worrying about it and doing nothing.
So we'll talk about some strategies to make that feeling, minimize that feeling, right? By putting an emphasis on action. So, and some of this comes from my own experience, right? Like, it's not like I'm just teaching some random theory. I mean, a lot of it is like hard knocks, learned in the school of hard knocks over the years and more recently as well. So, one thing I've seen as a hiring manager, as well as, trying to find a job earlier, is that there's just too many applicants for any given job. You know, you see a job being posted, you see like 100 plus applicants in like a day. And then look at it from the hiring manager side. I'm sure some of your managers, you know what it is like. You know, there's hundreds of resumes to look through, and you're not going to look through all of them. So the important thing is to like stand out. You know, how do you stand out? We'll cover that in some detail. But I want to just give a broad level set of challenges that we run into in today's market, as well as because of how things have changed, say compared to like, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago when job search seemed like a lot different and simpler. And then you have the mess of the applicant tracking systems. You know, there are different ATSs and you have to fill up, all this data over and over in different ATS systems. So that's a nightmare. And then you have, again, there's a way to mitigate that, and we'll talk about that. And then, um, you know, asking for too specific of a skill set. This is a problem that I think comes from just poor overall hiring practices, because I think we should be testing for ability more than specific skills. But anyway, a lot of managers tend to seem to focus on specific skill sets, give a laundry list of skill sets. That shouldn't dissuade you from applying. Certainly, you're not going to apply, say you're a React developer, you're not going to apply for an Angular job because those are completely different, right? So, but within the realm of JavaScript and other things, you could exercise some judgment in terms of like, well, yeah, they're asking for that, but I can still apply and make a case for it. And the other challenge that you often see is no response to applications, right? And it can be very frustrating. And again, we'll talk about some strategies on minimizing that. And then there's the whole cognitive dissonance, right? This is cognitive dissonance, for if you're unfamiliar, is like where you have two different values or attitudes. And because those are contradictory in nature, they tend to create discomfort internally, right? So one view is that I'm a great engineer, or I'm a great leader or manager or whatever, and then the other attitude is like, I don't have a job, right? Now that's dissonance. And I would say use that to your advantage, because that can be a motivating force. So it can be hard to experience, but when you take action, it can minimize, and you can actually bring it to resolution over time. And then there's the mental stress of the job search, right? We'll look at each one of these and how to handle each one of these. First is too many applicants, how to stand out. So this is what you should do first, right? Like the people that you have worked with, the people that you know through your social circle, get them to introduce you to roles in their company. This should be like your top priority. I'm not saying do it at the expense of applying for jobs, but this is something that you should do consistently, right? So you have a large network, you want to work that network over time, make sure that people know you're looking and what value you have to offer, and maybe even offer to do some contract roles, right? Like that can just lead into something full time and so on. But I would start here, and I would highly encourage. And I mean, I don't know about each of you, but I personally looked at my own situation in the past, like how many jobs over my career have I actually found because somebody introduced me to that role. And it's like, I would say 80%. It's pretty high. And so it's a very successful action. And in the day of LinkedIn and online application, it can feel like it's no longer relevant, but it's super relevant, right? People still hire because they know somebody through somebody, right? That's a very big factor. Everything else being equal, that's going to be a deciding factor. So you want to use your network to the utmost advantage. Like I said, do this with everyone in your network that is a first degree connection on LinkedIn. But even otherwise outside, right? Like, your past colleagues that you're not connected to, perhaps social circle, friends, acquaintances, whatever, neighbors, I don't know, like tap into that network. One thing I would say is warm up the communication line first, meaning if you haven't talked to them for a while, you want to get that, sort of warmed up, and then make a pitch about your situation, what you have to offer. always come from a position of strength. It can be emotionally, what do you say, weakening the whole situation, right, with a sudden loss. But you know who you are as a technical professional, as a manager. So, come with that confidence when you're talking to people. That's very important. And then another strategy I would say is prioritize on-site roles ahead of remote roles. Why do I say that? Now, it may not be feasible if you're out in a remote location, but say you're in proper LA County or wherever you're located, Austin or whatever. You could look at prioritizing applying for on-site roles. Why do I say this? One, the number of applicants is going to be far fewer than the number of applicants in a remote role, right? Remote role, the market is the entire country, right? So you're going to have hundreds of applications coming in. Whereas on-site roles, it's going to be geo-specific. You're going to have a much better chance of competing. If a manager got 40 or 50 applications, they're probably going to give it a closer look than if they got 200 or 300 applications. So this is something that might be a good way to get a role. Might be uncomfortable to have to commute and all that, but it could be a way you start something and then you can later switch to a remote role or work something out, right? But again, it's a personal choice, but something I would recommend. And just a little bit on the whole remote role, right? Like COVID really brought this change where roles started going remote, and it opened up employers to the entire market in the country. And hiring decisions were based on like, well, if I mix my cost across the country, then overall I get a better mix. I get better time coverage over the different time zones, so on and so forth. So there are various things that have happened because of COVID that has created this remote role, and I don't think it's going away. Right, there's going to be remote roles regardless of companies. Some companies insisting to be fully on site or on a hybrid. So when I say on site roles, you can include hybrid roles as well, right? So roles that require you to be in the office 2 or 3 days a week, that's still going to make it geo specific, which means lesser competition compared to remote only roles. And then when you apply on LinkedIn, you're going to be one amongst hundreds of people applying. So how do you make yourself known? You need to do this, right? Because you need to stand out. Nobody's going to look through like 200 applications, and it's going to be a roll of dice at that point. But how do you stand out? Well, let the hiring manager or a recruiter or the job poster know that you've applied, right? You may or may not get a response, but you increase your odds. So, and this whole thing is a probability game, right? You want to just increase the odds of somebody looking at your resume and giving you a call, and then you can take it from there. And another suggestion that I would say is like you can contact someone in the company. You may not know this person, but when you click on LinkedIn, you can go to the people section of the company and find people and just reach out to 2 or 3 people, right? Just give a brief intro of your value and skills, and then ask if they know who's hiring for the role, or that this role interests you, and if they would be able to introduce you, and so on. This is like cold calling, like cold messaging, so to speak, in LinkedIn, but it's better than just applying and let it be, right? Again, it depends on your comfort level doing this, but you have 3 options, right? I mean, 2 options. One is just the hiring manager or recruiter that or the job poster, um, but also you could do this other one. And another strategy I would say is if there is a company you like but they have no roles, just reach out to somebody in the company and just introduce yourself. Ask for like a little bit of time over Zoom or something, so you can talk with them about what they're doing and how you might be able to help and so on. Again, this is like cold outreach, but is just again increases the odds and also gives you the feeling of motion, forward progress in motion, right? Like you're not just sitting there waiting for things to happen. You're trying to make things happen, which will make a big difference in your mental and emotional state. The key though is to like de-link the action from the result, right? We often are so used to like associating rewards with actions. And when we don't see the rewards, we feel like the action is useless or like, feel demotivated by it. So it's important to sort of de-link that and just focus on the action. And the results will eventually come about, right? So that's a strategy to use for just one's own sanity in the process. So ATS is right. It can be frustrating to fill this out over and over in different ATS systems, but I think thankfully now it's become a handful of them like Greenhouse and Lever and I don't know if Workforce, if it is still Workaday or something. There's like a few of these, but one thing I would recommend is don't quickie this, right? Like don't lie in bed applying it on your mobile phone or something. Just treat it like you would treat your work. Sit at your desk, do a proper job of filling out whatever needs to be filled out. You know, and it is what it is, right? Like, but you want to give it the best. You may want to spread it, over the week, or like you may want to do, in the mornings or afternoons or whatever. Like, try to like set up a system that doesn't result in a feeling of exhaustion and overwhelm, which can happen when it, if you try to apply and you got to go through this whole ATS and you're in bed, let's say, don't do that, right? So it's also important to like have a schedule in this whole thing. Just treat the job search like a job, right? Be in your office at home doing it, right? It's very important. And then another thing is don't use AI generated cover letters or resumes, right? I mean, I'm sure if you tried some of these things, it, it sort of sometimes gives it away that it's generated. So you can use it as a base, but always, review it, hand edit it, give it that personal touch that brings out uniquely who you are and your experience, and let it not become robotic, right? So always review, like I said. So the next thing is the challenge is, too specific of a skill set being asked. Don't prevent this from applying, right? People will sometimes look past that, and again, you're trying to just improve your odds. So, and then customize your resume as appropriate. I mean, obviously, we're not trying to stretch the truth too much, but you can always position things if it's not explicitly 100% within your experience profile. And then, in an in-person interview or a phone interview or Zoom interview, just be convincing of your current skills and your ability to learn quickly. I mean, some strategies for showing that you can learn quickly, or like you can talk about something that is relevant to their tech stack, or something that is more current, in terms of Gen AI or anything. Just gives the impression that you keep yourself up to date and you're in a quick learner and all that. So try to show it when you interact with them. Also asking very informed questions about the company, about their product, about challenges and with deployment or uptime or whatever. All these things help give a fuller picture of your experience and skill set. Another one is like this is a skilling up part, or the upskilling, or the skill augmentation. Identify top technologies, languages, libraries, and frameworks in demand. I mean, I'm sure if you Google it, you can find out, which languages and libraries and frameworks have the most job requirements, right? So based on that, prioritize your learning so that you're not just shooting in the dark, because there's like a plethora of technologies, libraries, and languages, right? Like, a few years ago, Go was like the latest and greatest, and now it's like Rust and so on the back end. So it always changes, but look at like what's the demand for it, and based on that, prioritize your learning, and then spend schedule time in for learning every day, so that one, you're enhancing yourself. Learning always improves emotional state. So keep yourself challenged and enriched and all that. And then do some projects where you're just not listening to stuff or watching stuff, but actually doing something, setting up things, and actually trying out code and and keep it simple, not too complex, something that you can do in a few days. And then put it in a GitHub repo that is public, right? So you can then share it when you are applying for jobs, or if somebody were to ask you for it, or you can post it on LinkedIn, whatnot, right? So all this become, and the more you can have on your GitHub repo, I think it helps. I mean, again, this is all a probability game. You're just trying to increase your odds. And then if you're up for it, participate in any open source projects. Um, that'll get your work known, but also more importantly, it might help you expand your network, right? You might end up talking to developers, they might see your work, who knows? And all these people are not just, people without a job or anything, they are actually working for corporations, right? Like big companies now support open source work. So you can get noticed. And this is one other way to expand your reach. And also something that you can develop as a long-term side thing that might just make you more well known, make you more proficient, so on. And then no response to application. This is a big challenge, and it is because of the number of applicants that we talked about earlier. So with this, I mean, just make sure the basics are in, right? Like, don't use an email that is too cluttered that you miss an email from a company or a recruiter. So maybe keep a separate email, or I don't know, like just make sure that you don't miss emails. That's important. And then make sure you take any and all calls, right? I know there's like all these random calls that come in. You can always hang up, but state your name and greet with a pleasant thing. And I mean, obviously, if iPhone or Android or whatever says it's a spam risk, don't take it. But otherwise, do take the call, right? Because you never know if it's a recruiter that's reaching out. And then on the ones that you've applied, you might want to keep a Google Sheet or something, that tracks like who you applied to when and sort of, so you can have a system of like reaching back and checking in with them through a message on LinkedIn or emailing them or whatever, right? Just do that. And again, this is to improve odds, right? So, and then put out more applications and communication, right? This is very important. So, and the reason it is important is because it's a numbers game, and you want to increase your odds, which means you have to have more applications out there. You want to reach out to more people. You want to get them to refer you. So keep doing this, and that's why sort of leads to the next point of, I think somewhere I mentioned, I think later in the slide it comes, have a system in place and have stats week to week in these things so you can track how you're doing on these things. But we'll explore that in a bit. Cognitive dissonance, which we looked at, when you have two conflicting attitudes or values about something, like your ability and your worth, but the market doesn't see it. Now that can make you feel like you don't have it, right? And it's a human nature to sort of like try to adjust our reality to fit what is out there, but don't do that, right? Like that these are two conflicting ideas or views, but use that to motivate yourself, right? By reinforcing your excellence, your values, your skills, and then post on LinkedIn, right? Something, it doesn't have to be a lot, just a paragraph, right? But something relevant to your area of expertise. And the key is to not get stuck up on the quality of the post, but the quantity is more important, right? I'm not saying post junk, but post often and consistently, and don't get into this perfectionist mode where you feel like you can't post because, whatever, right? Like you need to have something to say, and I'm sure you can find something to say. Um, and it doesn't matter whether people react or not. One great example of this I've seen is Juan, right? Uh, he was a PM on our team at Stamps. He posts pretty much consistently, I think 3 or 4 times a week I'm seeing. And there's like very little like likes or whatever, but he consistently posts. And I think it's going to pay off, right, at some point. But regardless, it's valuable content that goes out there and then people interact with it. And suddenly, like I now remember him because he's posting. posting, right? So if an opportunity were to come up, what am I going to do? I'm probably going to give them a call, right? So you want to be in people's minds. You want to be in people's, um, you know, short-term memory, so to speak, right? So that's the way to do that is by repetition. Um, so yeah, create content that is of value, but don't get into this perfectionist mode. And then be consistent in your cadence of publishing content, right? It doesn't have to be long form content. I don't think anybody reads long form content these days. I mean, if you want to do a LinkedIn post, that's fine, but keep it to like a few paragraphs, or maybe have it a monthly thing, but like short posts, you can do it daily, you can do it multiple times a week, whatever your comfort level is, but keep a cadence. And then engage in comments. This is comments, this is like other people posting that are in your network or in a second degree removed or third degree removed, whatever, right? It shows up and it's something that is relevant to your area of skill set or your area of interest. Just put a comment in there, and this is because the LinkedIn algorithms, look at all these factors, like, how much is an individual engaging on LinkedIn ends up having an effect on, like, recruiters reaching out to you, new people reaching out, et cetera, et cetera. So all these things matter. And that's why engaging in other people's posts is important. Just do it like once or twice a day, right? Like, you don't have to force it, but when you have a chance, do it. And then most important of all, meet new people, right? You have to meet new people. Having worked at a place for a long time, it can feel like you're in a comfort spot, a bunch of people, your routine. So you have to change your mindset, change your operating basis such that you're making a conscious effort to find new people, meet new people, either online or in person, right? But you want to be networking, you want to be connecting. And then yeah, consistently do this, right? The repetition is what is most important. Like doing it like once a month or like, once in 6 months, it's not going to cut it, right? Like do it like every week if you can. If you can't do it every week, maybe bi-weekly, something, but keep a consistent way of enhancing your network. And then another thing, right? Like connect people with other people. Say you found a role and you got rejected, but maybe somebody else in your network knows that. Introduce them, right? And then do this. Like if you guys just do this as a group for each other. Hey, I found this thing while I was looking for my stuff. This is not my cup of tea, or this is not my wheelhouse, but this might be a fit for you. So if you do that, the power of the network is going to really start working its magic, right? Like given how many people are now in this situation, you can see how that has a multiplying effect or a multiplier effect instead of doing this as a solo thing, right? So I recommend this very highly. Help other people, connect with other people, and that's in turn going to help you. And then the market will eventually see it, right? And you're going to get a job interview, a job offer, and then the dissonance will disappear. But use that as a motivating force, not as a depressing effect, right? So just it's a viewpoint shift, right, about how you use it. But the key is consistency and the number of repetitions, and being very methodical about the whole thing. And then mental stress. This can happen, may not happen right away, but over time can happen. So some strategies for that are like treat the job search like you would treat a job. Like have a start of your day, have an end of your day, right? Then enjoy time with family after that, right? Do your hobbies or workouts or walks or whatever, right? But then work a little bit extra, a little bit harder, right? Spend that time in enhancing your skills. So you want to have a certain section of your day for applying for jobs, networking, a certain part of the day, and then skill development as a certain part of the day. So if you're an early person, use the early part of your day for for skill enhancement, and the latter part of the day for applying, whatever, right? Like work out what is best for you, but then keep it consistent and keep it organized so it feels like it doesn't feel overwhelming. See, a feeling of being overwhelmed comes from a lack of organization, right? And a lack of a methodical approach. When you have those, when you have systems in place, you'll be more organized and you'll feel more in control because you are sort of like dictating the rhythm of things and not just reacting to things, or just because there's nothing coming in, not feeling depressed about it. And then invest in your fitness, physical fitness, right? It's vital because the state of the body is going to affect the state of the mind. So, if you're already into fitness, great. If you're not, do something to keep the body moving, right? It's very vital. Um, and everything that goes with fitness, right? Like minimize sugars and all that stuff. Everything, do all of that stuff. And then human connections, right? This is super valuable. In the workaday world, we do have it by default. And when you're not, you need to make sure you keep that in. Family is very important, right? Like it can be a source of joy, and use it as a source of joy, right? Do not bring your stress from your job search into the family situation. Just be totally there and present when you're with family. And then use your social connections, keep your social connections. Don't feel like you have to withdraw because you're out of a job or you're looking for a job. Keep reaching out, keep, connecting with people. And it greatly helps. Talking with people is, believe it or not, very therapeutic. I'm sure you all have a reality of it. And then church, if you are a member of your local church, and you have not been going to church, maybe start that. Or if you're going to church, keep that in, right? If you're not into church and you have a local club of some kind that you're a part of, go to that, be a part of that, right? Like, and engage in activities outside of your job search. And then take a walk, right? Sometimes walk can be very extroverting and relaxing. And when you're walking, it's probably important to, like, just look outside and just not like, look at a phone or something when you're walking, but just look outside. a- And just not just as a physical activity, but also as a mental thing, just extroverting your attention, putting your attention out there. Um, do this, as often or as little as you like, but, I found it greatly helpful. I mean, when I'm working, I found that I can get a mental reset when I take like a 20 or 30-minute walk around the block, middle of the day, or whatever, right? Like you feel exhausted, you feel like you can't focus, whatever. Just take a walk and come back, and it'll make a big difference. Um, and then reinforce your sense of self and your worth. I mean, you know who you are. You have all the accolades that you've got on your job, and all those are still valid, right? So it's very important to um, have that reinforcement within yourself about who you are, what you're worth, and keep that mental strength and that idea of who you really are. I mean, there are various strategies to do this: affirmations, visualizations, prayers, recalling achievements, recalling pleasant memories, etc. Right? All these help. Recalling pleasant memories, you can just sit there and recall, or you can just look at some pictures from the past or whatever, right? Like, I'm not saying do this like all the time, but schedule some time in on a weekly basis to do these things, and you will find it helpful and stabilizing. And then do things that you've always enjoyed, right? These things will help uplift you, and the better you feel emotionally, the better you're going to present yourself, both in the job search as well as in your immediate life and around friends and family, right? And it's important how we wire ourselves up internally is going to reflect outside, and it's going to attract good things, right? So it's important to have a very positive frame of mind. And I talked about the system of keeping this going, keeping things consistent, repetitions and stuff. So keep stats, right? Like metrics, because what doesn't get measured doesn't improve, right? We all know that, right? So you have to measure it in order to improve something. So things you can track on a week to week basis would be like number of jobs you've applied, number of people you connected with or reconnected with, right? Just because you connected with somebody in your network doesn't mean you're done with that person, right? Like you can reconnect with them. That will count towards, and when you keep it as a metric or a stat to measure week to week how you're doing, it'll sort of force that behavior, right? But it's more of a conscious thing rather than a reactive thing, or like just doing things because it's selective. Just be unselective about it, right? Like you want to just reach out to as many people as you can. And again, do it at a pace that is appropriate, because you have to design this whole thing that fits your schedule, fits your urgency, and you have to go beyond your comfort zone, right? Like if you're not a person that likes to connect with people, new people, you should just get out of that. And for me, doing this presentation is not exactly comfortable, right? But I just committed to it on Friday because I felt like I should do something about it. And then I just forced myself to make this and do this talk. And there's also other things I'm doing that stretches me out of my comfort zone. And I think we all should do that. And I'm sure we all do that at work, but that's sort of like the environment sort of requires it. So we respond to it, right? But this is like the environment doesn't require it. So you have to sort of put that there and make that happen. And then another thing, other stat you can keep is like the number of referrals you got, right? Meaning how many people referred you, right? Did somebody say, okay, I'll get back to you? Yeah, that's like an acknowledgement that they'll refer you, but then follow up later. So just keep track of these things. It doesn't matter if the number is low or high. Just keep track of it and see how you can improve that number or keep it at that rate. And then time spent learning. This could be reskilling or skilling up or whatever, right? But keep track of how many hours you're spending week to week so you can keep it consistent. And then time spent on your fitness, right? Time spent with friends and family, right? Like all this, like you can make it very systematic if you want, and you can make it as much or as little as you want. But if you just keep some sort of a Google sheet where you're tracking these things, then it becomes a very conscious thing. And you're like, you know, it'll force you also to do things that you're not comfortable doing, right? Allowing you to go out of your comfort zone. So anyway, the other thing is your brand, right? So this is an overlooked area, right? We all work in our jobs, and then we get so lost in it that we fail to create a brand of our own, which is independent of our employer. It has to be something that exists outside of the context of your employment, right? It is vital in this market, but in any market, it is important, right? You have to be known outside of your employer. It's important. And then create it intentionally and consistently. Like I said, make posts on LinkedIn, consistently, and make it a habit, right? And when you keep stats on it week to week, you will be forced to look at that number and like, shit, I did 5 posts last week. This week, I did only 1. So next week, you can bring it back up, right? And then it'll serve you now, but also later, right? Like you get another job now, and then you have to switch jobs. You don't want to be in the same situation of being unknown, right? I mean, when I'm saying unknown, it's not like you're completely unknown, but how known are you, right? Outside of your first degree connections. So, and that comes from creating content of value, expressing your ideas, helping others, right? All this matter. All this is part of your brand, right? And then it's not limited to social platforms, like I said, right? Like these are like local meetups matter, um, and then local connections matter, like your local community that you can make connections, whatever, right? Everything matters. Um, when people know that, okay, so and so is an expert developer or is an expert QA engineer, they're gonna remember that, right? And you want to present that image. So that's where, like, one of the things that is a social malady or a often like what people try to do is like try to be self-effacing, right? Like they're not presenting themselves in the best light they can. They try to be modest. They try in the name of humility. Humility doesn't mean you don't have to express your confidence, right? You have to be able to like let people know that you're competent, confident, able. That has nothing to do with humility. Humility is being able to receive feedback, is being able to see your own faults and correct that, right? So humility should never be confused or conflated with the the ability to reach out and just be very outgoing, so to speak. I'm not saying that you have to be somebody else than who you are, but you have to be able to present an image that gives confidence to whoever it is. So you say you're going to a party, and it's just a party, right? But like if you're presenting yourself in a very confident way about your work or your profession, and strike up conversations, that leave an impression, all these things matter, right? They will remember to, look you up or check back with you if there's an opportunity, whatever. Again, these are all like this is more of a long-term thing, um, and something that should be looked at and worked on. Then there's the other aspect of when you know, are out of a job and you want to look at what to do. If you're of the kind that wants to do things on your own, entrepreneurship is an option, right? But this is the key. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, and this comes from experience, you have to do something that'll produce income quickly, right? So, how do you do that? There's a whole bunch of materials out there that you can find out, but the key is don't go build something, but first see if there is interest, right? This would mean like putting up a landing page, say you're going to build some software, right? Put up a landing page, talk about it, promote it on LinkedIn, right? Promote it on Facebook, like, share it with your friends. If they express interest, if they will sign up for it, right? If, also not just a random thing, actually have an offer, right? Like have a trial period with an upsell cost or whatever, right? Like see if people will actually pay you for it. If they won't, then, you don't build that, right? I mean, this is where you have to build something over some period of time. You might want to make sure that there is interest. So if you can build something in 2 weeks and put it out there don't worry about it. Just build it and put it out there, right? But the key is to see how to bring income, and that's very important in the role in the role as an entrepreneur. And then it requires a full-time commitment, right? You can't be like part committed to it and trying to do a job. You have to make a decision. Am I going this way or that way? Because having you know a foot in each is not going to cut it, especially with entrepreneurship. And that's why I'm saying you need to like shorten the time to producing income if you are going to go that path. And then you will need your spousal or partner support and agreement, right? This is vital, right? Because otherwise you're going to fight inside, which is going to drain you emotionally, is going to drain the relationship, and it's not worth it. So unless you have agreements, you shouldn't proceed, right? And even when you have agreement, there should be parameters to it, right? Like how long are you going to do this? What are the milestones, right? Like it has to be something that you're held accountable to. And then you try it, it doesn't work, then move on. But have agreements in place, verbal, of course, but just work it out. Don't go it as a solo thinking that you can do it without familial support. It doesn't work. And then the other thing is I mean, if it works out, it's a chance to do something great. So, if you have the financial reserves and you think you can do something quickly that'll produce income, go for it. And then if you're building something in tech, right, like don't focus. I mean, if it is specific, you're building a technical product or a technology product, of course you have to focus on the tech. But if it's some other thing, some e-commerce stuff or whatever, don't focus on the tech so much, right? Get the product or get the offer in place. Figure out what your sales pipeline or sign up pipeline or conversion process is going to be and all that. That's where a lot of the attention should go initially. And that also sort of covers point number two, which is you have to make sure there's interest, right? So that's where designing an offer and putting it out there and seeing if people express interest and all that. The best way to see is if people want to say it could be an offer with $10 a month or $10 a one time, whatever, right? If people won't pay for it, then not worth building it. But if it's something you can build in 2 weeks, it doesn't matter, just build it, right? So anyway, another way you can look at this is it could be a side gig that you can keep going that could become full-time at some point, right? And it can coexist, especially if you're not trying to build something but are trying to do more like a consulting thing. A side gig would work very well with your job search. And I saw this LinkedIn post and I thought it was fascinating by this guy. I don't know this person. Somebody liked this person's post, and that's how I saw it. this guy called Adam Goodman. He's a video editor or producer. And he says that he had applied for like 100 jobs, at least 100 jobs in the last 6 months. And, some companies got back with an unfortunate message or whatever, but whatever, right? Like he then decided to just take a different approach, right? Like, 4 weeks ago, I decided to send my resume and an email to 12 local production companies asking them if any needed any help with video editing. None of these companies had job postings. Within 2 weeks, I started a 2-week video editing contract. They'll also have ongoing work for me. I started working 1 day a week for another company. Martin edited a video for a school, and 2 companies said there's future work that they would love to help, have my help with, right? I mean, this is like an example of like, not letting the system define what the rules are, right? He just broke the system, broke the rules, right? And he got something going, which can all end up turning out into a full-time thing, right? So I think this is his video editor profile or whatever. He's got 35 videos in his portfolio with 14 million views or whatever. So I think it's 14 million. Yes. Anyway. So these are some strategies to use, right? Like, so you could do consulting as a side thing in addition to your job search, and they wouldn't be conflicting. It's if you're going to build something ground up that would be conflicting, then you would have to make a decision, have a commitment, and all that. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on it. Now, stay connected. I'm here to help and support. Why am I doing this? Because one, I've been through some of this myself over the years in different roles in the past. Not, so I have personal understanding of the situations. That's one. And another thing is, beyond a point, helping is where you get your most satisfaction. So that's basically why I'm doing this. Now, I set up a free networking LinkedIn group called Career Growth in Tech. Believe it or not, this occurred, I don't know, 10 days before this event went down. And I have like 13 people in the group right now. Some of you are there. It's a very young group, but you can get your friend, yourself in and others in, and you guys can exchange notes on like roles and other things. This is where I talked about how the power of the network is helps a lot. I mean, LinkedIn was supposed to be this, right? And obviously, I'm creating this group on LinkedIn, so thanks to the platform. But how the platform exists per se doesn't help you keep that thing going. But a LinkedIn group can help you do that. So get in the group, share your posts, job posts that you came across that somebody else might find useful. They might refer you to roles that they run into, whatever, right? Like can become a helping a circle that can help. And then I'm launching a podcast series called Leadership in Tech, and it's coming out. I have 2 episodes recorded. Be a bi-weekly podcast. It's on LinkedIn. You can just search for Leadership in Tech. You should be able to find it. But this is a link. I mean, these are all optional, right? I mean, even this is optional, but this is more valuable for you, the free networking thing. This one is just more like if you're in engineering management or program management and, just want some ideas and thoughts and stuff you want to listen to while you're driving or whatever, this might be a good thing. And these are like people like CTOs and VPs, right? Like those are the kinds of people I'm interviewing. I think next week I'm interviewing somebody who's a CEO of a software consulting company. So it'll be valuable insights overall. And I plan to publish one every 2 weeks. And again, I'm putting what I'm telling you guys in practice, right? Like I'm creating a brand for myself. That's why I'm doing the podcast, right? And then connecting people with connecting people with people. All these, do not have immediate benefits, but in the long run, helps build your brand, right? And it's also just good karma, helping people. So anyway, there are other resources for your job search process, something called as reverse recruiting or curation services. What this is like, instead of you instead of, recruiters coming and hitting you up, these are recruiters taking your resume and posting it for jobs or whatever. And then there is curation services. There's like two names that I ran into. Yeah, see, so this is one. This is called Mobius. Um, so this is a guy that is an ex-Googler. Um, and basically they take out the tediousness out of your job application process. If you want the help, right? If you don't want the help, fine. But if you want the help, you can check these guys out. I mean, they have various pricing plans, right? Whatever. I think the lowest is like $35 a week, which seems like a lot. But again, look at the value, see if it's something that is worthwhile, right? Like this is a big commitment, $1,000 a month, I guess. I don't know, or is it maybe a one-time thing? I have no idea. I've not used this product or service, so I can't speak to the quality of it. But how I know about this is somebody reached out to me, I don't know, some months ago, and I just kept it in one of my things to, as a tool to use at some point. And again, the same thing with this one called My Personal Recruiter. Somebody reached out to me on LinkedIn a couple of months ago. This is very pricey solution, I think. Like they have, I don't know, see, it's like a crazy pricing plan, but this is more I mean, you can look through it and all that. It's like mypersonalrecruiter.com and then mobiusengine.ai. So that's what those two are. Um, again, that's to take the tediousness out of the whole process, but it's your choice to use or not use it as you see fit. So yeah, those are the two services that match this reverse recruiting / curation service. And then local meetups, right? Like this is very important. I talked about it earlier. So, or even online meetups using meetup.com for local techs and, various, for QA, I'm sure there's a local meetup. Development, front-end development, I'm sure there's one, and so on. And then local tech forums outside of Meetup. I don't know if there are any outside of Meetup, but I'm sure if you Google it, you can find it. And then if you're in the LA area, take advantage of the LA CTO forum and its members, right? Like you can just search on LinkedIn for LA CTO forum. You should be able to, it'll pull up a whole bunch of people. These are all CTOs and VPs and stuff. I'm a member of it, right? Like I can like also, say, hey, I have a bunch of people. I have to figure out how to like make this a little more systematized. Somebody did this for like Airbnb, I think, where they had a website and it listed all the different people and their resumes and stuff. I mean, maybe one of us can build it. I don't know, but that's another area. If you're just looking at LA, this is a forum and the members of it, just a cold outreach might help, right? So just another tool in your toolbox to improve the odds of landing a role. That's about it. I'm going to now stop recording first.